All right. Chai asked me to talk about pros versus random scrubs or Joes.
Or fucking trans.
Or fucking trans at the Green Dragon. And a couple things I'd like to say about that is, first off, hands. Against pros, I have to keep a good hands against them. Like if I'm playing Jund, then I want a very aggressive hand, or if I want to control, then I want, my controlling pieces and plenty of land to play. Against Joes, I can keep looser hands. Like for instance, when I control deck, I can keep like 2 landers and not even worry about it because I know that I'll be able to overcome them with skill as opposed to, trying to outplay somebody and missing a land drop. In an aggressive deck, I can keep land heavy hands and just kind of just peter on as much as I can because I know I can outplay them and therefore make, I guess, worse decisions than I could against a pro, because pros will exploit any mistake that you make severely. Sometimes even the smallest mistake will cost you the game because a pro will know how to exploit it, and a Joe really will just be like, oh, whatever, I really don't know what to do now. Another thing I found is blocking. Now, it's the reverse in this case, where if I have a 2/2 creature and let's say somebody has a 2/3 creature, if it's a pro, I will probably attack into that with untapped mana because he's going to think, oh, I've got a trick, and that's going to be 2 free points of damage. Now, obviously, sometimes they're going to call your bluff, but most of the time, you can bluff a pro pretty consistently. A Joe, however, will just look at the board and not think about, oh, what's a giant growth or what's a disfigure, what's going to kill me. He doesn't. He's just like, oh, well, you're a 2/2, I'm a 2/3, I'm going to block. So you have to be, I guess, not as aggressive against a Joe sometimes as you can be against a pro, because they will block and you'll be like, well, shit, you got me, Tran. Fuck.
Fuck Tran.
Also, riskier plays I like to do against Joes because sometimes I like to just see what would happen sometimes. Against a pro, I couldn't do that. I have to play really tight and I have to play exactly on point. Against a Joe, I can, just throw out, let's say I can terminate his first creature just to see what happens. Oh, I terminated an elf. Oh, big deal. Against a pro, I'd obviously wait for his Baneslayer or his kill condition.
Yeah.
So, because you need to focus when you're playing a pro, and when you're playing a Joe, it's kind of like, I guess playtesting is the way I look at it. So I kind of do crazy things to see what would happen and if this would work. So that's how I really look at pros versus Joes. Other than that, that's pretty much the differences of how I play against a pro versus a Joe. Just pros are tighter, you can bluff them more. Joes, you play more loose, and they're more focused on what's on the board, as in what could be on the board. So that could probably help a lot of people win more tournaments than, at the Green Dragon Friday Night Magic, as long as Mike doesn't bring his card holster, 47 cards.
Well,
that's for you.
I bought him a new 45 card clip.
Oh, did you?
Reload his deck when I figured out. Yeah, I know.
Good guy.
Got rid of that Smith & Wesson. But I do have a serious question.
Okay.
Now, one of the best magical articles ever written was on Star City, and it's basically why I lose. And this guy made a huge list of what he does wrong, or analyzed himself. And one of the things that tags along with that, pros versus Joes, would be, do you sit down against an opponent and just know you're going to win, or do you respect everybody equally before you shuffle up the cards?
Right. Well, at Friday Night Magic, I pretty much walk in the room, and this sounds really conceited, but I know I'm probably going to win that tournament. Honestly, there's only one person right now that I would be quote-unquote afraid to lose to, and that would be Mike, because Mike's the only one that actually brings good decks, knows how to play the decks, and actually is a high skill level that I actually have to play against.
Yeah.
Everyone else, I mean, there are some good players. Like, I know we give Tran a hard time, but he's pretty good. You're pretty good. I have to play a little bit above you sometimes, but generally, and when Chai was playing, I had to play a little bit upper scale whenever we played competitively. But most of the time at Green Dragon Friday Night Magic tournaments, I really just kind of sit down and I'm like, I'm going to beat you, and there's almost nothing you can do about it, because the only way people like that are going to beat me is if, this kind of really sounds shitty, but if I draw bad or they get really lucky. I know that sounds horrible, but
hey,
that's just how I feel. At a PTQ though, once you've gone to a couple PTQs, you kind of realize who's who. Like, you recognize faces, you recognize people, like groups of people. You'll know, like, you'll find that like one guy, and you've seen him at a couple PTQs, and if you've never seen him in a top 8, then kind of don't respect him. Then you see who he's hanging out with, and then like his little 4 or 5 people that they're talking after the thing, and you're like, okay, well, he's not that good, so they're probably about mediocre level. And then you see that one guy that's like, he's really good, like you've seen top 8 before, you've played before, and you've lost or you've beat him and it was a tough match, that you see him and then you see the friends that he's hanging out with, and then you're like, okay, well, these people are good, so I have to actually keep tighter hands, like I said before, against them and actually play better. So really, it's all about experience, where you go, and then how you handle it, I guess, because at PTQs, if I don't know the opponent, I know LSV mentioned this, and a couple people have mentioned this, that like the way people shuffle, if they're sloppy, they're probably not that good, but if they're tight with their cards, they're kind of good. And then the infamous Crown Royal dice bag, that's a big tell. But most of the time at PTQs, if I don't know you, I'm going to try to play like you're a pro. But then if I see who you're hanging out with or actually recognize you, it'll change my game depending on that.
That was a good way to sum it up. Okay, one thing I'd like to reiterate that might make this easier for people to comprehend is Chai once told me, really stuck with me, and I think Runyon emphasized it, is against pros, you're not playing to win, you're playing to not lose. And against Joes, you're playing to win.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, so anything else you'd like to say about the subject?
That's pretty much it.
He does have crabs.